Boker Tov. Good morning. As we usually do, we always start off with a mitzvah. We give some tzedakah. So let's do so. A little bit tzedakah. Start of the day with a mitzvah. We also start off the class with a bracha. If you have a nice cup of coffee in front of you, make the bracha with me. If not, you could answer Amen. Let's do a shahakal together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niya bidvaro. Although I don't like doing this, I'm starting the class with a bit of a disclaimer. Because of a very sad passing in our community, that I did not have both the proper time, and focus of mind, clearness to do the full research I wanted to do before giving this class. So it's not by no means a comprehensive discussion on this subject. It's a thought that is related to the portion of the week, and we will discuss, and also a personal story that happened with me as a rabbi, as I will explain in a moment. So let me get straight to the story. The story is, and for the privacy of the person, I won't give all the details. The story is the following. I received a call from the Aleph Institute. I don't know if all of you listening to this class are familiar with the Aleph Institute. The Aleph Institute was established by the Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, Chabad Rebbe, of blessed memory. It was established probably in the early 80s, I believe, maybe late 70s, early 80s, as an organization that helps both Jewish servicemen throughout the American armed services throughout, both in the United States, throughout the world, with their Jewish needs, and whether it's they need religious, kosher religious items, tefillin, mezuzahs, kosher food, or any other needs which is beyond what the usual chaplaincy might do, or they often work with chaplains in the army, again, to help Jewish servicemen throughout, as well as they also go ahead and they help and Jewish individuals who are incarcerated. To use to use the term over here, I see here a quote from Nelson Mandela from South Africa. There's a quote here I'm reading. It is said that no one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails. A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones. And we might talk a little bit more about that. So I received a call from a dear colleague in the Aleph Institute. Over the past, we've definitely worked together, and thank God, based on certain connections over the years of being in the rabbinical field, we have been able to help people in time of need, both in the local jails and etc. So, as we say in Yiddish, "Man soll nicht wissen," you shouldn't have to have anybody that you know that needs that help. So, having said that, the Aleph Institute, they reached out to me of an individual that was incarcerated, not for any violent a crime, but nevertheless a felony, and was incarcerated for a number of years, has been out now for a while, and is struggling on the basis that, society is very unforgiving, and was really having a problem being able to rent, although an apartment, although the money is there, the job is there, but people are really reluctant to have someone who has a past record, and nobody was willing to give him an apartment, and basically asking whether I know of a Jewish owner who would be willing to give him a second chance, essentially, so he has where to live and he could rent and so on. So this, got me thinking about, of course, there are two sides to the story at face value. There are risks when you take somebody who has a past problem and a real chance of them regressing to their past problem. Do you take the risk? Do you not take the risk? So I want to get back to the story, but before I get back to the story, I want to talk a little bit about the parsha, and then maybe apply it to our situation, to this question. So the parsha, the portions that we have read this past Shabbat, was about the fellow who develops biblical leprosy, what is called in the Torah tzara'at. Tzara'at was a skin disease, but it's not a skin disease like we have today, where you put some ointment or change your diet and the disease disappears. Whatever today's skin viruses or diseases are, it was purely a spiritual disease. The Talmud and the most common knowledge for that we explain for the tzaras, although in the Torah it doesn't specifically say what the cause of the tzaras is, the leprosy, the biblical leprosy, but what is common knowledge, there are several transgressions or sins that a person might be punished by receiving tzaras. The most known of the sins is lashon hara, evil talk, gossip, evil talk, what is known as lashon hara. And that is why when someone gets tzaras, he has to sit, and he has to, once it's confirmed, basically to sum it up, the Torah says that if somebody develops tzaras or is suspected of having tzaras, he comes to the Kohen, he comes to the Kohen, to the priest. As you might know, the Jewish people were divided into three groups: the Kohen, which are the descendants of Aharon, the priestly tribe, and then there is the Levites, and then there are the Israelites. Most Jews today are from the Israelite tribe, and then there is the Kohanim and the Levites, who are both from the Levi tribe. The Torah states that if somebody has tzaras, the person, he goes to the Kohen, who examines it, and based on certain diagnoses, it is determined whether he is tamei, ritually impure, or tahor. Now, if he is tamei, then michutz lamachane moshavo, he has to sit outside of the camp, and the reason for that is he caused division with lashon hara, with evil talk. His punishment is to go ahead and also have to be placed for 7 days michutz lamachane moshavo. Then, as part of the process, the Torah uses a term which is interesting. The Torah says, as part of the purification process, the Torah uses two what seem to be contradictory terms. First, it says, "V'yotza hakohen," the Kohen should go out to the fellow who has the tzaras. But then, a verse or two later, the Torah says, "V'huva el hakohen," that he has to, the person with the tzaras, should be brought to the Kohen. I'm looking at it right now. The Kohen, this is in Leviticus chapter 14, verse 3. And then just a couple of verses later, actually, I'm sorry, I apologize. First it says, V'huva Kohen. First in verse 2, it says he should be brought to the Kohen. Then the next sentence says, V'yatza HaKohen, and the Kohen should go out. So you got to be brought to the Kohen, and the Kohen has to come out. Which one is it? Is he brought to the Kohen? To the Kohen? So commentaries discuss various answers of what this means. V'yatza v'huva Kohen may be that he has to come as close as he's allowed to come. Then the Kohen goes as far as he could come. Various answers to this seemingly contradictory directive from the Torah, whether the Kohen goes out, the Kohen, the priest, goes out, or the fellow with the tzaras comes in. I want to suggest over here just a somewhat of an independent thought. So you could take it or leave it, my thought, but the concept is based on a sort of Torah attitude. and then apply it to our situation over here. I want to say that they're both true. The Torah with saying v'huva lakohen v'yotza lakohen, he should be brought to the Kohen, and the Kohen should go out, is describing both elements, both truths that are necessary in giving this Metzora a second chance. We're talking about second chances. This fellow went ahead and he did Lashon Hara, he did evil talk, which brings division amongst people. In return, which is considered a serious sin, although a very difficult for all of us to keep, to be careful of. But the Torah gives this person a second chance, as the Torah always gives a person a second chance. And perhaps in the language of the Kohen, in the language of describing the process of the purification of the Metzora, it gives us a little insight into our question and our story that we have just asked. So I want to talk a little bit, and again, as I said in the beginning of the class, I did not have a chance because of the sort of tragedy within our own community. We had a tragedy, and that was someone passing before his time, a very dear member of the community. And I was definitely sort of busy with that. So did not have I only mention this because I want to sort of excuse myself. I did not have the proper time to give the class the preparation needed. But I want to talk about something that's almost close to my heart, and it's not always, it is close to my heart. It's probably no secret that to many of you that I would say that I'm probably a little bit more aligned with what is called in this country the more conservative approach to life. Only because the Torah's view is more aligned with that approach, but not totally. Definitely not totally. Growing up as a youngster, definitely my overall view was, you got to be tough on crime. And it still is, but there is definitely some modifications to that. Being in the rabbinical field for many years, I have seen firsthand what's the word I'm looking for? I've seen firsthand how both the judicial system and the prison system and so on can, let me put this in a positive way, can definitely be approved upon. I have seen prosecutorial overreach, abuse. I've seen that with people that I've tried to help personally. And I have seen the way people who do deserve a second chance are unfortunately not given a second chance. I mean, I quickly looked up statistics, whether they're totally accurate, I don't know. I didn't, again, give a thorough search. But the rate of people the revolving door of people that have been imprisoned and end up back in prison is in this country is the highest, I believe, anywhere in the world, definitely anywhere, I think, higher than in the Western world, at 44%. That is a staggering number. Almost half the people that are in prison, end up back in prison. That is, as I quoted from Nelson Mandela, I mean, I spent 2 years in South Africa. As I quoted from Nelson Mandela, that that a nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest citizens. Now, of course, there's a balance between protecting and protecting the innocent and enforcing the law, which is the sort of highest priority. But if you have a system where almost half the people incarcerated end up back in prison, you are not helping Of course, you're not helping the prisoners, but you are not helping society. Something is wrong. Something has to be rethought. Interestingly enough, you will not find in the Torah itself, you will not find incarceration, imprisonment, as a punishment. You will find maybe once there's a place where they said they held him in the mishmar, they held him in a holding cell sort of until they would figure out what to do with him. But as a punishment, we do not find it. In the Talmud, it exists, but really in rare cases and not as a sort of mainstream type of punishment. The Torah talks about capital punishment, meaning if for whatever reason you have forfeited the right to live, and only the Torah can make that decision. God says, okay, capital punishment under circumstances that are quite strict, which almost never occur, the Talmud says. But there's the other punishment, which is not capital punishment, is malchus, is being whipped. You got whipped, and the Torah states clearly, once you're whipped, you move on with life. So there is a punishment of someone being sold into slavery if he couldn't pay for theft. But even there, that's if you couldn't pay. And even there, you end up with a family, and you need to be treated almost better than the person treats himself. So the rate of the rate of success, the chance of success of rehabilitation is extremely high, as opposed to what happens in the American prison society today. I mean, I'm reading one. I've never seen this website before. So, today's world, unfortunately, a lot of times people have agendas, and not always is it, and the truth can sometimes be bent based on those agendas. But I have been blessed to be a rabbi for quite a number of years, and I've seen some of this, firsthand. And my personal view has changed. Again, not for not being tough on criminals, but for seeing what we could do, because many times people are in prison actually, or end up in prison either because they can't pay their bail. It's not as simple as it is at the surface level. Again, I'm not the high expert. Someone on here could come and disagree with him, but I'm talking about, my experience. I mean, I'm just reading here one or two things here from the website. So here, how did it happen? Mass incarceration. Nearly 500,000 people sit in prison at any given time, waiting for trial because they cannot afford to pay bail and be released to await trial. Okay? Research shows that people awaiting trial who are not in jail are less likely to be convicted and less likely to be imprisoned if they are convicted. Okay? Today, there's also mandatory minimum sentencing. Laws that dictate minimum sentencing strip judges of the ability to account for individual circumstances. Now, again, there might be reasons for this. I am not the expert. There might be reasons for why there's certain minimum sentencing and so on and so forth. I'm not challenging that over here. Okay. There is, of course, the war on drugs, where often, nearly 50% of incarcerated people in the federal systems are in prison for drug offenses. 2/3 of that population are people of color. Harsh punishment for non-violent crimes resulting in increased plea bargaining, and this I know firsthand, as mandatory minimums become more commonplace, more and more people charged with crimes increasingly opt to plead to lesser charges that still include imprisonment. Listen to this percentage. Okay, you with me? Problematic probation and parole. Strict rules regarding probation and parole cause many people to be sent back to prison for minor violations. Nearly 25% of state prisons admissions are due to probation violations. Again, you could argue with me, you could agree with me, but this is what I agree with me. What I agree with me is that I'm going back to the story I started off the class with. and weaving it into the parsha question that we asked, that we brought to the Kohen goes out. In my particular case, my feel, my sense, and a bit of the research I've done, I would say that, let me again offer this insight. V'huva la Kohen, he should be brought to the Kohen, and then the Kohen comes out. Maybe the Torah is giving us the following suggestion. V'huva la Kohen means what the person who is impure does from his part. In other words, he is coming to the Kohen. He is coming and reaching out and making a serious commitment for him becoming, or her becoming pure. Then the Kohen goes out. In other words, if we look at the individual and we see that there's a real effort of repentance, and there's a real effort to mend their ways and to start their life again, then v'yotza HaKohen, the Kohen has to go out. The Yotza HaKohen, he has to go out of his comfort zone. He has to go out of where he says, why do I have to get involved? Why do I have to take the risk? No, you are obligated to go out and take the risk. It's interesting. I asked the question about this particular case that I'm discussing to a fellow who owns apartments. And the person says, look, Rabbi, I just don't want to take it. I asked several people. Some people responded positively. But then I asked one individual, I just don't want to take the risk. I do not want to take the risk. It's I don't want to. And then I asked, interestingly enough, I asked a couple of teenagers what they thought. And they said, absolutely, he should be given a second chance. And if he or she goes back to their original wrongdoing, then you evict them, you get rid of them, and so on. But they should definitely be giving a second chance. And I was comforted by that our young, now you could say they don't have life's experience. That's a possibility. But nevertheless, I was comforted by the fact that these young teenagers, their initial immediate reaction was one of compassion and one of understanding and allowing a person to have a second chance. We say every single day in davening, in our prayers, 3 times a day, we turn to God and say, God, forgive us. Every day, our sages tell us our soul goes back, and the reason we say Modani in the morning is because our soul goes back after a day where I'm not sure who of us can say was pure, and sometimes even less than pure. And yet, God returns our soul in the morning every single day fresh and gives us another chance. So, so the thought and the message of the class today is, you could think about this and you could give me your own opinion by all means. But we should give ourselves a second chance. And more importantly, or just as importantly, we should definitely give someone else a second chance. And especially if they make the effort and they show real commitment, they come and reach out to the Kohen and they say, I want a second chance. I want to improve and mend my ways. Then the Yotza HaKohen, you have to go out and be willing to take risks. You have to go out of your comfort zone and help a fellow human being, which in itself, the fact, if we lived in a society where people who sometimes made a mistake or did something that they should not have done and deserve punishment and should get the punishment, because again, you do want to have law and order and you want to protect and you want that there should be consequences. But when a person makes, and they have served their term in punishment, and they reach out sincerely, then we should be a society that offers compassion and allows people for a second chance, even if it calls for some risk and discomfort on our part. Those are my thoughts for today. You could definitely welcome to give us the feedback or disagreement or further insight. By all means, please do so. May we only share and study about good things and happy things, etc. But this is also a good thing, a compassionate society. When God created the world, the Medrash tells us that God created the world first with the attribute of truth and justice, or din, of justice. Ro'ah she'ein ha'olam miskayim, the Medrash says. He saw that the world cannot stand on strict justice. Shita v'imoy midas harachmim, God went ahead and he mixed in He partnered with creation the attribute of mercy, and only with that then was the world created, and only then, and only in that way can the world stand, endure, and be kind, etc. So everybody have a fantastic week, and thank you for listening. Please share these words of Torah.